Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of Through the Fire. I am your host, Ryan Wickline, and today we're joined by a very special guest. He is a podcaster and journalist, Mr. Noah May. How you doing today, Noah?
I'm doing good. I was telling Ryan at the beginning we don't have no storms today, so today's a good day. We had to postpone it last week because of a thunderstorm decided to overrule the podcast. But today's been a good day. Today's
Yeah,
been
and
good.
I think I'm pretty sure I had to cancel one day too because the storms was messing up my internet and everything too. So
Yep.
awesome. So number one question, the audience is probably wondering, who is Noah May?
Well, he's a person that's lived a very interesting life. He's been through a lot of troubling times, but has always found a way to be able to come out on top every time and has been able to really make a career and a path for him. But he's gone through a lot in his lifetime, but he's been able to overcome and been able to really come out on top.
Nice. When did you first realize you had depression?
It was around when I was 13. I started having it around middle. It was my last year of middle school. It was the fall of 2015. I started a lot of things in my life decided just to go haywire at that point. A lot of my personal issues decided to come up with school and friends and family. I had a sickness in the family at that time and had just a whole bunch of things going on. And so I started, everything just kind of toppled on me and really just came crashing down. And I started having these kind of inner thoughts about suicide and just had some really sad thoughts. But of course, with me being 13, I was still fairly new to mental health at that point. My parents tried their best to kind of keep that subject away because they didn't want for me to be kind of invested in that topic because it does get graphic and it's a really tough topic to talk to a child about at 13 at that point. And no one around me really had opened up about it. So that was kind of when I first started realizing I had something wrong was when I started having really bad deep thoughts and my mindset was just really in shambles and it was just a whole bunch of things I kind of toppled on, but that was when I first noticed that I had depression.
Yeah, what kind of symptoms did you have?
Let's I had some. Well, main thing was sadness. I just felt no motivation, tired all the time. I had some weird ones too. I had like it's like a bipolar thing that was going on. Even though I've not been diagnosed with bipolar disorder. My brain was just thought weird stuff during that time. It was just like my mindset was all scrambled or something. That was kind of a huge symptom from depression I had, and we took note of. Um, Mostly it was just lack of motivation. I felt tired all the time, just didn't want to do anything. That was kind of the main symptom that was pretty persistent during that time.
What what did you do to kind of help you through that like trying period? Because like 13, you're probably just starting puberty and everything, so you're going through a lot right there.
Well, there wasn't really a whole lot that I did do at that point because it was so fairly new to me and was just something that I had to deal with at such a young age. I did I did do pornography at the time. That was kind of a way for me to kind of escape from reality, was to go down that rabbit hole. But then there was just, I finally had to talk to my parents about what I was personally going through, and so that was helpful at that point. But other than that, I really did not do anything. I tried to do some hobbies around the house to try to get my mind off things, but it just didn't work. I now kind of looking back, kind of equivalent to those points. I'm a person that has like, I can remember like certain songs or certain things that I was doing at that time that just trigger like a flashback to that point. I can remember like, oh, this is what I was doing at this point in this time. So there was some I started finding music at that point. That was kind of a thing, but it was just like a foot in the door. It wasn't a fully immersive thing. It didn't happen until about a year or two later after that. But there was just nothing really that I tried to do. I mean, anything I did do, it just, the depression kind of overpowered it, and it was just hard to try to not think about what I was going through at that time.
Yeah. How did COVID affect your mental health and you physically?
So when COVID had started, I was about 4 years with my depression at that point, and I was diagnosed with clinical depression, which means it comes and goes. There's no really pinpoint of like, oh, you're going to have depression at this point every year for this amount of weeks and this amount of hours. It's very much a sporadic thing of, oh, I could have depression next year. I might not have it for 9 years. It was just very sporadic. When COVID had started, about a month or two before it was kind of clarified a pandemic, I started having some kind of health issues that was very atypical of what I was normally at that point what sickness was. I started having nausea spells every time in the mornings and in the middle of the night. I would have really bad nausea spells to the point where it actually would make me physically sick. And we thought it was the flu at that point, as the flu was pretty rampant in Alabama. The flu usually is most it's most severe in the wintertime compared to March or April. So this was about January, February. So we thought that I had the flu or touched of some kind of stomach bug that was going around. Well, I didn't have a fever, I didn't have chills or anything, so it was a lot of the symptoms for the flu were just not there except for the nausea. We went to the doctor eventually. I think this was about end of February, 1st of March, and was telling him all the symptoms I was having, and even he was kind of baffled about what was going on, um, which is something you don't ever want to hear a doctor say. I don't know what's wrong with you. Um, so he said, but that doesn't mean that there's not something going on here. So he made me stay out of school for a week because we thought that it was something personally, like school a factor was something in my immediate circle causing it. And the only thing I could really pinpoint was I was in a class that was pretty difficult, but I had been in so many classes before then that were so difficult, but it didn't make me have this kind of feeling. So I didn't really want to pinpoint it for that reason. Well, we went back to the doctor a week later, and that was when I got diagnosed with anxiety. So I was diagnosed with that anxiety when I was 18, officially, and this was about a month after. Basically, it was purging. I was not trying to purge myself, but that's just how it ended up. I lost a significant amount of weight during that point. I lost about 20 pounds when I first got anxiety. A lot of my muscle and fat that I had built up had gone away. I was basically skin and bones at that point, which I was pretty skinny at that point. So it was just a worsening fact. Um, he put me on Ensure, which was a protein shake to help gain a lot of that weight back. But I have had a lot of severe repercussions from that. I've had long-lasting effects. I've had trouble opening bottles. A lot of my hand strength has kind of gone away. Uh, Opening anything with a bottle kind of rips up my skin. It's gotten better now, but at first, any bottle lid would peel the skin back on my hands. I would have to use my shirt or a special gripper to help open bottles or anything that had a rugged edge to the cap. Um, I was real shaky. Trying to go downstairs was a hassle. Um, but then after that, I was just a nervous wreck everywhere, and COVID absolutely did not help. I ended up contacting COVID later in the year, had COVID for 6 months, which kind of reversed a lot of the huge symptoms that I had basically gained up. Lost all the weight again, lost all my strength again. I actually committed or attempted suicide during that point because my brain was just so warped at that point. Um, I was at a tipping point. So about 2021, I finally was able to get over COVID, and that was kind of when my healing journey started. But the anxiety was just too powerful at that point. It affected everything I did. Going to the store, going to a restaurant, going down the road 5 minutes. I mean, it. I was just like this, and I didn't have like the kind of pain in your chest that a lot of anxiety, um, people with anxiety suffer. Mine's more the physically ill, nauseous style, which I don't like. I'd much rather would have the tightness in my chest than puking all the time. But that was just my life for about a year and a half. It was just constant. It was so severe. I don't honestly know how I made it out of that.
Yeah, it sounds like you struggled pretty bad with anxiety and depression. What steps did you take to get your mindset dialed in a little bit to overcome some of this?
Well, end of 2021, I finally started doing therapy after years of being like, therapy's only for people that are crazy, and I've not lost my mind quite yet. But I finally caved in and I said, okay, let's just see if this does something. Let's just see if something miraculously flips anything. It somewhat did. It wasn't an instant, oh my God, my life is saved. Um, I went to another doctor that was a psychiatrist at that point, and she had prescribed me some anxiety medicine that a doctor had not prescribed yet. And that was, to me, the godsend that I was looking for. A lot of my anxiety symptoms had gone away. I was able to actually eat out at restaurants. I was actually able to hang out with friends and not literally have like my stomach being knots. That medicine to me was a godsend, but it was therapy at first, finding groups of friends, because during that whole time, all my friends from high school basically abandoned me and basically tossed me out to be raw, dead animals, just to be feast on from other animals. That's kind of how they treated me. So it was trying to find new friends, trying to find comfort in myself and kind of motivation. I was very self-love. I did not have any self-love at that point. So it was bunch trying to find that and opening up and kind of being more open to talk about it. But to me that was it that really helped. But it was a long process that did not happen overnight.
Yeah, I'm sure that usually never does just happen like a quick fix.
Mm-mm.
Why are you so vocal about mental health and your own struggles?
I well during that whole this whole process, it's I've no one in my immediate circle talked about it at all. They didn't open up and say, "Oh, I have depression, I have anxiety, I have schizophrenia." I don't. They don't have any of this stuff. I wanted to be that voice that was like, "This is what people go through. So many people go through every day." I wanted to kind of speak up and be like, "This is what I'm dealing with," and kind of help people have that ease of, okay, well, if he's able to open up and talk about it, that means I can. Or if he's being able to show strength in telling his story, then I should start telling mine. It was just a lot of, for me, trying to get this out there, get people to be talking and be not make it be such a taboo subject anymore.
Yeah. What advice would you give to someone that was struggling with their mental health and felt shame because of it?
I would say honestly, don't feel ashamed of it. For years I did, but then I finally came around and started to kind of brace it and say that it's just a part of who you are. It's something that you can't really control either. It's something that, it's just kind of what most people would say would be unlucky. But I don't want people to think that if you get diagnosed with it, that means it's the end of the world, your life's over and everything. Just have it to where just live life normal. Just live life to the fullest. Don't let it control you. Stay. stay motivated and keep fighting, and you'll always ultimately come out on top in the end all the time.
Yeah, I love it. How is your mental health today?
Significantly better. I have brief moments of like depression that happen and seep through. My anxiety has pretty much been calm and tamed. I don't really get any of the nausea anxiety. I've started kind of developing the more pain in my chest type, and I was like, ooh, maybe I don't want that. I thought maybe I want the nausea, but I don't want any of it at this point. It comes in spurts. It'll try to shine through and try to overpower, but my medicine does a really good job of trying to keep it calm. It's been one of those things where I think I'll have to take the medicine forever. It's not one of those things that I can probably miraculously be able to wean off of or not have to take when I'm older. I think it's just something I'll have to take till my deathbed, unfortunately. But it's keeping me calm. It's a lot better than what I would say it was a few years ago.
That's good. Do you have any like daily routines or like rituals that kind of keep you grounded and proactive and stopping like any anxiety attacks or any bouts with depression?
I've had countless therapists and, doctors give me tips and tricks about how to, if I'm starting to have an anxiety attack, how to minimize it, but that don't work. For me, once it starts, it has to go its full course, and it just has to run its course. The whole attack has to happen, and once it's done, then that's when it's calm. So none of the things that I have personally tried have helped. So I don't really do them. I I don't really have a routine. For years I was just in that school mindset. So I would wake up, go to class, do homework, and just trying to make it through the day. But now since I've graduated, it's just working all the time, and it's actually kept my mind pretty busy. I think my mental health's gotten significantly better in the last year because of how busy the podcast has been for me and how busy my mind has been with all these projects that I'm working on. So that's kind of, I guess, the daily routine, working and doing podcasting every day. It's helped, but before then, I didn't really have any routines that I did every day that kind of help mitigate them.
Yeah, nice. You went to Auburn University, even though you were struggling with depression, anxiety, and everything, and you pushed through, which is very commendable. Why did you choose to study journalism?
This is such a funny story because it's so not the typical way that people would think of. When I was a junior in high school, I our school was very proactive. Like, we want you to get a major down, so then by the time when school comes around or when it comes to signing up for college classes, we know basically to do not for them to do much work, but they were like, pick a subject. Well, I had no clue what I wanted to do at that point. No clue, had no admiration. Well, I watched a lot of talk shows at that point on TV and on YouTube, especially, and I thought that looks fun. I'll do that. I'll just do that as a career. But of course, I was like, what major do you go in for that? So I did some research, and journalism ended up just being kind of a reoccurring major that I saw in that. So I thought, okay, well, I'll just run with that. So at first, people laughed at it because they saw who I was growing up, and they're like, "You be a journalist, the person that doesn't talk, literally as shy as can be, and you're wanting to do a job that's right the opposite." They're like, "Okay." So they all thought it was a joke, and I thought it was too. But I thought this is what I want to do. It's going to take time to break out of my skin and try to get out of that, but we'll worry about that when it gets there. And so I just ran with it the whole time I was in college. Didn't change majors. I was dedicated to it. About halfway through, I was too dedicated. I thought, I'm already too far in. If I screwed up, then I'll just suffer the consequences when that road comes. But I was dedicated with it. I enjoyed the major a lot of what I did because I didn't do a whole lot of work that I thought I was going to. So I liked the major, and I met some real good people that were in the classes. So I mean, it worked out, and it ended up working for me. That now, did I see podcasting as being kind of like what comes out of it? Absolutely not. I didn't see that at all, but it just kind of fell in my lap, and it just kind of all transpired to this. So this wasn't the plan of doing this full time, but I ain't mad about it.
Yeah. What types of skills did you learn that you use right now in podcasting?
That's a good question. I have used, well, interviewing for me was number one. That was the biggest thing that we did for any of the big projects was interviews and conducting interviews and sending out emails. So to me, that was something I was already accustomed to, I already knew so much about. And so I was like, okay, this was pretty much a good skill that I got. Research was another thing. Um, Editing, I did some editing with some of the platforms, so that kind of has helped. But if I had not done journalism, then this would be kind of a whole different ball game when it comes to the interview styles because I didn't know all the guidelines of how to conduct interviews. I didn't know how to um like the do's and don'ts of what not to do and what to do during an interview, how it's supposed to be crafted and how it's supposed to flow. So I think I would have had a little bit more of a difficult time if I had not gone into journalism or had assignments that involved setting up interviews and conducting interviews and asking questions. So a lot of those skills have actually kind of been in podcasting, which has been a surprise of how much a lot of the skills I learned have really infiltrated into podcasting. So I've learned a lot that's been pretty surprising for me. So, but those are just some of the skills I've learned that have really helped.
Nice. So, what inspired you to say, "Hey, I'm graduating college. I'm just going to start podcasting"?
Uh, well, boredom. It was full on from that, but I had always wanted to do podcasting for years until I started doing it full time. And I I'll just tell the full story of how I got into podcasting. So, during my whole anxiety fiascos thing, I woke up one day and was like, I want to do a podcast. Because at that point, I think people started noticing podcasts were starting to become real popular with it being hot of COVID. No one had anything else to do. So people started discovering podcasts and people saw that you could actually have a successful career in it and that this could be like a money thing that you could do from home. So I thought I kind of wanted to jump on that bandwagon, but I had no knowledge of podcasts. I knew what podcasts were at that point. I watched or listened to one or two at that point, but nowhere near did I know a lot about podcasts in general and the flow and how that's all supposed to be, how it's supposed to go. So after years of taking a learning online and Auburn, when I went there, they actually offered a podcasting class that I took, which was kind of a surprise. So I took that and learned some tips in there. But um, yeah, starting earlier last year, about a month or two after I graduated from college, I finally was able to focus time on the podcast. I was finally able to, I was able to get a lot of what I was really wanting to get stapled on the ground up and running. I didn't have to worry about homework or classwork at that point. I mean, it was just, I was more at ease. My mind wasn't as chaotic with so much things going on. And February 2025, I launched my first episode. I tried launching it for months at that point, but it kept going through revisions, and I didn't like how some of the earlier episodes I recorded turned out. So it was a lot of redoing and re-editing kind of scheduling and redoing it. But then February, I kind of started doing the solo episodes, and then it just kind of took off from there. You know, you what no had no plan of doing this full time, but after I saw how difficult it was finding a job last year, um, I thought, I'm just going to do this full time. I just will put all my time and effort in this, and we'll just see what happens. And it's just kind of taken over my life at this point, but it's been a really good experience, and I really am proud that I have the shows.
Yeah. What was probably the biggest fear you had to face when before you released it and you started, were debating on whether starting?
I think sustainability for me, when I was doing the solo episodes, I think I did about 9 or 10 episodes solo. And then at that point, I was running out of solo ideas. I was like, I don't know what else to do. And, I had other ideas of other podcasts in mind at that point. I was just like, do I start a whole new podcast because I'm running out? But it was just the thing of like, but I don't want this one to go dormant. I don't want, so sustainability was one, but luckily Podmatch kind of saved my tail a little bit when it came to the interviews. Uh, I didn't really expect to do interviews so quickly, though. That was another thing. I thought this would be, I'd get my first interview probably about a year or two after my podcast is out. This was like 3 months. It was 3 or 4 months after launching that I was already doing interviews. I was like, this is crazy. And then going on shows too was another thing that I was like, okay, I never imagined that I would be like, I personally would be interviewed for a podcast. And I've done about 70 now, and it's just I can't wrap my brain around going on there. I can see like doing the interviews myself, but just for people reaching out and wanting to hear my story, it's just been crazy.
Yeah. It definitely kind of humbles you a little bit, right? When you first start and then you actually go through the experiences of all what this entails.
Yeah, I was still living with my roommates at the time, and one of the main ones had moved out. But when I was I was always so fearful of like podcasts because I didn't want people to think that I was just talking to myself in my room. I didn't
Yeah.
want my roommates to think that they needed to call the psych hospital on me. I was just like, I don't want them to call a specialist in. But they knew for about a year that I was like wanting to do a podcast, so I kind of prepared them for it. But it just felt so odd. I just felt very uncomfortable hearing them. But I did like some interviews there. I will say majority of all the episodes I've recorded have actually been in my home because I did have to move back in with my parents because it got too expensive to live out on my own, but they were kind enough to let me come back and be able to do this full time and not have to look for work. So they've been real supportive of this. But a lot of those early episodes are very interesting because it was just tackling like my roommates coming in all the time at all hours because I was technically free from class. They were still in school. One of them was a senior, one of them was a freshman. So they were still very actively going to classes, still going in and out, and I was just at home all day. it was just a it was just a weird thing. It felt good being the first one done because I could just rub it in their face like, oh, I remember those days. But yeah, it was just weird. They didn't really have. I think they started like I don't think they honestly cared at that point. They were just like, okay, they were real nonchalant about the whole thing. I wanted to do an episode or podcast with them, but I thought mm, it's so odd. It'd just be so awkward. But one of them I really wanted to do an interview with because it was just like he was a class clown to me. And I have an episode for me personally. I kind of we'll talk about them coming up, but it's just it's been just battling that, and it was always constant. Like we had upstairs neighbors and downstairs neighbors, and I would always say the elephants are starting to come through, and so a lot of my earlier episodes are so comedic because it was just I would be in my bedroom essentially with either in an empty apartment or have elephants above me that stomped on the floor all day. And it was just a matter of time of when they'd start doing it. So I had a lot of fun doing it, but um, there's a lot of things that I am hoping of achieving that I still would like to do going forward. But, it's taking one step at a time.
Yeah. You currently have three podcasts, right?
I do.
Can you tell us about all three of them?
So I'll kind of start from not the least popular to the most popular one because they all kind of have a significant story. So the one that's kind of new that I've kind of revamped was Music Talks. It's a basically music podcast where I do kind of a deep dive into albums, and I've interviewed a few guests so far that have come on that are in the music industry and have a background in there. So it's basically for anyone that's like really into music and wants to hear people that are in the industry or hear albums and stuff. That's kind of what that podcast is. The next one that's kind of started taking off has been Southern Reads. It's kind of a book podcast that I came out with right around the time I released Lethal Venom, and it's essentially a book podcast. It's kind of like book club for podcasts. Is kind of the best way I can explain it. I do kind of in-depth book reviews. I do kind of do some discussions about books I've read, and I also do interview some authors as well. Interview indie authors. I've actually interviewed some pretty highly successful authors as well. So that's it. That podcast is mainly for book lovers and people that are kind of like in the book industry and author industry. And then the main one that's kind of the star of the show is Lethal Venom. That was kind of the one that kind of took the main pack when I first started doing the podcast of like, I want to be the main child of the show and want to be the main child of the room. So Lethal Venom is essentially a podcast. It's a variety show. It's more of me talking about random topics, but sharing the honest truth. I've had some really deep personal episodes for me personally. A lot of my earlier episodes are, I think, my most personal. I've talked about my relationship with my father. I've talked about my friends, my family. I've talked about my mental health struggles, job experiences. And then I've had others interviews where I've done mental health stories. I've had people that have overcome addiction, have gone through very traumatic experiences. And then I've had people come on and talk about weed. It's just it's very much a variety show that kind of has people come on there and tell their honest stories, and it's all around focusing on the truth and just having honest conversations without having to feel censored. So that's kind of all three podcasts. Lethal Venom is still the main one that's kind of taking the lead. It's the most popular one. I think most people will recognize me from that one the most. But the book podcast is kind of slowly starting to kind of take a run for its money. It started. I'm in my second season for that one. I'm still in the first season for both because I'm don't go by any rules when it comes to how I want to format my shows. But yeah, they've all been doing pretty well. I like all three of them. I wouldn't do all three if I didn't like them. But some of them have just taken the spotlight more and have more care than the others. But I'm slowly trying to start to balance all three of them at once. So, but
Yeah.
it's a learning process.
Yeah. What's probably the biggest challenge you face as a podcast host?
Well, unlike most podcasts out there, I do everything solo. So everything is done on one and only. So hosting, researching, editing, posting, promoting, I mean everything that goes into a podcast I do myself. And I've kicked myself in the butt a little bit on doing that and have put a little bit too much work into myself and have really overworked myself, but I'm slowly starting to catch up. But I would say that's the hardest thing, running everything by myself. But I've also seen assistants that I'm like, nope, I don't trust an assistant to run my business. I don't trust it because I've had some pretty outlandish assistants that I think, have an IQ of one. It's like I don't know how you even are able to type on a computer and make words. I don't understand. I've experienced those kind of levels of assistance, and I'm just like, no, I don't know. I'm not paying someone to do that. So, um, while it is a lot of work, I like to know what's going on with everything I'm doing, and I like people to know that everything's coming from me and everyone's hearing from me. So it's a lot of work on my end, but much rather have a show that I know what's going on versus one that's I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, completely agree. What's your short term and long term goals moving forward?
It's a good question because there's so much I would like to do. At 24, did I expect to move back in with my parents and basically have to live back with them? Absolutely not. That's not the plan I had. Was it, did I plan on having like a podcast be my full-time career? Not at this point. Not at all. Some goals that I really would like to, I obviously would like to be able to live out on my own again, be able to have an apartment or better much a house that I can pay off of. I would like to see the podcast be kind of a good revenue for money coming in. I don't want to be one of those people that's like, oh, I make $5 billion doing this. I just want to make enough to where I can make a sustainable life. If I can live out on my own, not have to worry about being kicked out or being put in the car on the street, that's all I really care about. So I don't care about making the millions of dollars. As long as I can make enough to where I can live off of it, I'm fine. I would like to have kind of like obviously revamp a lot of my production for the podcast. There's a lot of equipment that I would like. I'd like in my own studio. I would like a podcast studio to where I know that it's only me that's in that room, and I don't have to worry about background noise. Have to worry about being quiet all the time, and I can just be comfortable. And that's a big one. I really would like going forward as my own studio, like a podcast studio where I can talk and not have to feel like I have to be quiet. Um, but yeah, I mean, living out on my own, getting a house, those are just life goals I have. I'd like to get a new car. I've had the same car since 2018. It still works, but I just would like something new. So, there's stuff like that that I think about going forward. It's just a long ways down the road, I'm afraid, but I just, give it up to God. I'm real religious, and I just said everything happens for a reason. I kind of just go with the flow. I just don't really know it'll happen. I just wake up every day thinking, just make it through the day, and I don't plan a lot. I just kind of let life go and kind of flow at it. So, um, there's some goals that I would like, but it'll happen in time. It's gonna be a matter of when.
Yeah. How can people get a hold of you?
So the best way for me would be through my website. It's noahspodcasts.com with an S at the end of podcast. That will be the main leeway that people can go to find me on my socials. They can find information about my other podcasts that I do, links to where those shows are available. And you can also actually find places where I've actually been a guest on other podcasts as well. I have links, whole page of my guest appearances on there, so feel that's on there as well. But yeah, that's probably the main one that I would highly recommend people to go to. It's just my website.
Awesome. And I'll drop that in the show notes for everyone too. Is there anything we haven't covered that you want to talk about?
I don't. I don't really think so. I think one thing that I would end on for podcasting is, you know, people kind of look down on podcasters a lot because they don't really see it as a job or a sustainable future on there. There's a lot of podcasters that make decent amounts of living on podcasts. So it just takes a lot of hard work. And I don't want people to think that you're going to find success overnight. I mean, if you do, you might want to go try for the lottery, but it nine 99% of the time, it's not like that. It's very much a happens with time. So just don't feel discouraged. Keep posting episodes and just keep doing it at your own pace. Just don't lose that kind of false hope. Is what I would say.
Yeah, that's some great advice because it definitely doesn't happen overnight. I'll tell you that. I'm sure you went through some of them struggles, days you felt like quitting because you were just burnt out and tired of doing all the work, and you're barely getting any views or anything, and it's just like, oh man, and then all of a sudden it just
Yeah,
starts clicking.
yeah. It's very much a my show kind of comes and goes in
Yeah,
waves. It has popularity, kind of goes quiet for a while, then it
yeah,
spikes up and then kind of goes away. So it's just being sustainable and being dedicated to it. I wouldn't drop
yeah.
any of these three shows for anything. They kind of have saved my life at this point, and they're keeping my mental health grounded. So I'm gonna still do them, even if I'm have nothing to say. If I come on, it's just 2 minutes. I'm gonna be like shortest episode ever. but,
Awesome.
but yeah, only time will tell where the podcast will be from a year from now.
Yeah.
It'll be time will tell. Who knows? It might be something might happen next week. I don't know.
All right, final question. What is one piece of advice you'd like to leave our listeners with about overcoming adversity?
I want people to keep fighting for themselves. There's going to be some people that are really trying to mark talk you down. They'll really try to put a damper on your attitude and everything. Don't this be true to who you are. Be true to yourself. Be a fighter, and don't let anyone try to change your mindset or change your outlook on life. Just keep fighting and living day to the fullest, and screw what all the negative comments say, and just kind of keep your head up high and don't let people bother you.
Great advice. Well, Noah, I can't thank you enough for coming on here and sharing your story and your struggles with all of us.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's so important for shows like yours that can have fun conversations, but also have the more personal ones. So I really appreciate you for having me, and it was a complete blast. I really had a good time.
Hey, my pleasure. Like I said, we need more people to see that you can be dealt a bad hand in life and still overcome it and go do something very meaningful with your life.
Absolutely.
Well, guys, that's going to be all the time we have here today. Remember, the only way to get what you want is go through the fire.